Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks so much for checking out this video series. We're going to do a Brian Blade lick today. I know we've already covered Brian Blade, but I don't think anybody's going to complain too much if we hammer away at a few more Brian Blade licks. I think he's a great guy to focus on because he's rooted in New Orleans drumming. He's got a whole bunch of bebop in his vocabulary, yet the way he plays is fresh and innovative, but it doesn't sound completely out of context. So in keeping with our theme from last time, which we focused on a Jeff Tain Watts lick that has a little bit more modern sound to it, not so rooted in bebop, this is a similar kind of phrase. That was a 5-note grouping. This is also going to be a 5-note grouping. I took it from a fairly popular YouTube clip of Brian taking a solo on Jazz Crimes with Joshua Redman on saxophone and Sam Hell on organ. They have a great little organ trio called the Elastic Band. So I'll link the YouTube clip if you guys haven't seen it yet. And about 17, 18 seconds into that YouTube clip, during Brian's solo, he plays this little 5-note phrase. So it's fairly simple, it just sounds really hip. So the sticking is left foot, right, left, right. Left foot, right, left, right, left foot, right, left, right. So the accent pattern is ultimately what makes it hip, plus putting that bass drum in. So it's the strong accent on one of the 5 notes in the left, bass drum's on 2, and then a strong accent on 3 of the 5 note. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. The sticking, super easy. We're just alternating. There's a bass drum on the second one, so that breaks it up. But really, if you want to think of it as starting with the left, then the bass drum, then as the pattern loops from there, it's just right, left, right, left. Left foot, right, left, right, left. So it's really easy to play, no complicated stickings or anything. It's just putting that bass drum in the right spot. And also, as I'm always talking about, phrasing. Ultimately, that's what we want the listener to hear, is a bat-and-doom. So be careful on beats 4 and 5 of the 5-beat grouping or 5-note grouping on notes 4 and 5 to make 4 and 5 on the snare drum basically ghost notes. Now, what makes that lick something that we can try to tear apart and create something on our own, which for those of you that are members on my site, you guys have probably checked out that video series where I go over how to take a lick and break it apart and turn it into about 7 or 8 other licks that are all your own. To me, this is a great little example of how to do that. So it's a 5-note grouping, but really it's just 4 snare drum notes, or 4 stickings, right, left, which are all alternating. So it's a 4-note grouping in our hands that we're super comfortable with. We're just going to make it odd by adding a bass drum into the mix. We're going to drop a bass drum in between those. So it doesn't really create any sort of odd sticking for us. It just sounds odd because we're going to add one more note. So to take that, so that's how we get a 5-note grouping. I tried to expand that and come up with some stuff that would be the same idea, but this time, instead of a 4-note grouping in our hands, we're going to do a 6-note grouping because we have a whole bunch of sextuplet stickings that work well. So if I took a 6-note grouping and I dropped a bass drum in, then I'm going to have a 7-note phrase. One of the little phrases I came up with is the 6-note grouping is just a paradiddle-diddle. Right, left, right, left, left. So it's a paradiddle-diddle starting with the right. All I'm going to do first is just put the bass drum at the very end of that. So 6 notes in the hand, and then a 7th note on the bass drum. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like that. So there's 7 notes, but what's missing from it is that phrasing that we've been talking about in some of the other videos. So one of the ways I found that works well is I'm gonna put the first right on the floor tom, and then I'm gonna accent the sixth note, or the last left of the paradiddle diddle. Paradiddle diddle. Paradiddle diddle. So there is a simple way to take that cool Brian Blade 5-note grouping and expand upon it and start to come up with your own vocabulary. So try that with some of these phrases that we've been doing. But really, if you get nothing else out of this, that's a hip Brian Blade lick, 5-note grouping, really easy to play. Good luck.